Okay, so we're talking about men are the protectors and maintainers of women. The very controversial verse, Ayah 34. Many people have gone and excused it and said, well, it doesn't mean this, it means that, and so on and so forth. We do not have to apologize for anything. I talked about the methodology. You would never have a problem with anything in the Quran if you would know that this is the word of God. If God says something that doesn't make sense to you, but if you know it's from God and you disobey and you say, I don't agree with this, you're actually making your mind as God, right? Islam means submission. Whatever God says, if we know it's from God, that's what we have to discuss about mostly. What are the proofs for Islam? Can you, say, oh, I don't think Islam is from God because, oh, look what it says, it says, admonish them, then, separate beds and beat them, How can this be from God? Oh my God, it's so bad. Now, people that put these arguments forth don't know from their own selves, what basically what ethics are, what morals are, what is right and what is wrong. They change it all the time. So, for example, we look today, if in Western states, in Western countries, if a family, for example, if a man, for example, were to discipline his child, spank him or something or beat him, he can go to jail. But before it was not like that. We see even in the Catholic Bible, we see that to bring an upright child, give him a few spanks on his rear. But today you can go to jail, and even most Christians say, oh my God, that's not good. How can you do that? Oh, that's not right. And we know, of course, unfortunately, a lot of those I don't know if, but people have abused this thing, and it's not an excuse to negate these rulings of God because some people have abused it. Now, I want to make a point soon, but I want to go back to the 3 stages. And we talked about the ill conduct of the side of the woman. And that is after Allah is mentioned, and David does not mention it, of course, because it wouldn't make his argument if he would mention the whole context. That, the woman should guard her husband in her husband's absence, what Allah orders her to guard, which is, of course, her chastity and many other verses, right? And many other things. But if she doesn't, if the husband fears that she doesn't, there's proof for it, then you admonish her, right? You argue with her, you tell her, to fear God. Next, of course, right, you would refuse to share bed. Now, this can take much time. Maybe the woman doesn't do it. Maybe the husband's wrong. So you cannot go to the next stage to refuse to share bed, right? The only time you can move to the next stage if you do not see an improvement. So you go away again from home, and there's again signs that someone has been into your house, that maybe your wife has slept with someone else, and so on and so forth. So you cannot skip to this step. And then you move to the next step only if those, is proven that she is not changing, then you refuse to share beds. Now again, you cannot skip to the beating step if, you have no proof, this never happened. You can't. It's impossible. That's why people have misunderstood this verse so much. Islam orders men to beat their wives. They take this sheikh's, saying and this, and they make always, quote this little part and beat them. That's it. That's all they say. But they don't understand this issue. How can you, you can't just go and beat a woman. No. It talks about what? It talks about her maybe cheating on him, not guarding his house, not doing her, it's not about why he's not really listening to her. Some people, have said certain things, right? That has to be proven. But of course, if it's disobedience to the husband, if it's this and that, which can be in many different levels, and as we see from the actual context here, guarding what Allah orders, which involves her chastity, property, so many other things, being obedient and many other things, and what Allah commands her to be obedient, then you can go to this step. Talk to her, admonish her, and so on. Now, again, I'm repeating this because it's a deep point. You cannot skip to the next step to refuse to share the bed if you cannot prove it that she did something, or if she stops. Do you understand? It cannot be just a hunch and then you're like, okay, I'll count till 10. I'll admonish her, then I'll count to 10, and then I will not share bed with her, and then tomorrow I'll just beat her. No, it's if there's proof that she's not improving. Still, you're traveling, and still the same things happen when you come back home. She's being mean to you. She's not willing to do this and that. There's proof that someone has been into your house. She's letting men come into your house, many people that you don't want, so on and so forth. She's dealing bad with your property, not caring about the money. She's selling things left and right. Maybe she's gambling, drinking, so many other things that can be classified in there. Then only you would skip to this step. Now, think of the timeline, how much time can take. Usually, most of the time, this would solve it. Think of this timeline. Now, this doesn't solve it. There's still proof. Then you step to this. You cannot, as the Prophet ﷺ told, cannot hit someone, number one, on the face. Okay? Because people, when think it's beating, it's like a boxing match, right? As people do it in the West when they box with their wives, right? Sam and David, even sometimes Christians and Muslims too. I'm not saying that. But the abuses that go on in the Western world of women, it's, uncomparable to Islam and to Muslim countries. Uncomparable. Now, beat them lightly. And we know what the Prophet told us about this hitting. Daraba also, yadribhu. Okay, it means also hitting only, right? People translate it as beating, and the connotation behind it is like, it's a beating, it beats them. It's like, and there's many hadith that prove and talk about this, and especially the last sermon the Prophet gave, that you cannot, don't hit him on the face, don't do this, it should be something, just as a psychological thing. A man has a right, a degree above the woman in power. He's stronger in general, right? So if he gets angry with her, maybe gives her, a hit or something, this is what might bring her back into, into maybe fear, and she would realize that she's wrong. But that might not always work. That might not always work, right? And that's why there might be, if you fear a breach between them, there might be a divorce. Look at the next verse. Now you can bring in arbitrators. Now people might say, why not bring arbitrators before? Why not? Why leave, to these points to have these 3 steps? Think about it. If family and other people get involved, now the issue of the husband and the wife becomes public. We live in a world today where people live on other people's lives and what happens in their private life. Islam protects that. Women and men should first try to solve their own problems first, keep it. Then you bring arbitrators, right? Because these things might not work, right? And some people will make the argument, well, it doesn't work. Yes, of course it might not work, but you have to go to keep it within the family first, the problems. A husband is not allowed to beat his wife into submission, as David says, to like take her for a boxing match. He might hit her, just like when a parent hits a child, right? Well, people might say, oh, what is a woman, a child? Now let me give you this example. Is it okay, for example, for a man to discipline his 20-year-old son? Is it okay if he lives under his own? Now, this is 2 adults. One of them might be 45, the man, the father, and the boy might be maybe 19, 20. It's still an adult. Is it not okay? He's been providing her his whole life, and all of a sudden, this guy is being disobedient. He's doing drugs maybe. He's coming home at 3 in the morning. He's not respecting the rules of the house. He's being told over and over and over again, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then the father gets mad one day, just smacks his, his head or something, or his back or something. It's pretty much the same thing. 2 adults. One of them hits the other one. But who has the right over the other one? It is the father. He's the one who provided. He's the one who's given the son everything. That's why David will make the argument, well, it's not like the wife can beat him into submission, the husband, if, she always gets the lower hand. It's not like she can, if she feels ill argument from the husband, she cannot beat him or do something. Of course. Because they're not at the same level. He's the one who provides. Look, men are the protectors and maintainers of women. It doesn't say women are the protectors and maintainers of men. That would be a different story. Same thing as with the example of the 20-year-old and the father. It is, can you imagine? What would happen if the 20-year-old would hit the father? Can you imagine of the situation? What would happen if the wife would retaliate and hit the husband? Just knowing from the mentality of men and from this position of, are they the two equal? Who's been providing, who's been given, who's been sacrificing, and so on. And we have to keep in mind, we're talking here about a righteous man, a God-fearing man. If he were to abuse his wife and beat her, like David tries to say, he would be sinning against God. God would punish him, and according to Islamic law, she would be able to go to court and get a divorce and get him to be punished. So let's keep continuing with this